Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the No Name Cinema Society. It is a special Wednesday episode, July 11th, 2018, and we are starting now our 49th series of episodes, and it's starting here with our current feature, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. As you can see, I'm back here in Astoria, New York, where I'm going to be for the next several episodes, for the entire 49th set of episodes. And also, you can see I did shave the beard since the last time you saw me. I'm starting over, so you will see the beard regrow as we go along this 49th series of episodes. And the best news I have for you guys is Drunk Davie opted out of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So we got two other panelists, no Drunk Davie. So, you know, the dad's away, so the kids will play kind of situation. So let me start out with someone who has been on the show before. It's been on a lot of shows, including our top 10 of 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, world's best grandma, Devin Michaels is here with us tonight from Los Angeles.
I'm ready to knit. Just for you.
This is a momentous occasion in the No Name Cinema Society because, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to introduce our very first female member of the No Name Cinema Society, live from, and also our first in the Central Time Zone. Talia Brule is here with us.
Hi there. Happy to break the glass ceiling.
Yeah, there you go. Welcome, welcome.
You know how many generations had to fight to get equal footing for people in the Central Time Zone?
I know, right? Feel very special.
Not only is Talia our first female member, but two of the people that I'm closest to in the whole world are with me tonight to partake in our discussion of Ant-Man and the Wasp. And they're also hopefully going to drink with me. And I have got Lagunitas IPA here. It's the last one. I'm going to start with Two Hearted Ale on the next show, but I've got Lagunitas IPA here.
I have a sparkling champagne in a can.
It's like both fancy and not so fancy.
Easier to drink in bed.
Oh, I see. You're thinking ahead. Devin, you were going to drop some acid.
10 minutes ago.
Oh, you already did it? All right, good. Let me tell you guys about this set of episodes, our 49th series of episodes. It starts, of course, tonight, July 11th, with our discussion of Ant-Man and the Wasp. We pick it up again Monday, July 16th, with our indie spotlight, Blue is the Warmest Color, which is a French film from 2013. Our classic film discussion is Thursday, July 19th, and that's going to be one of our 1990 films, Pump Up the Volume, starring Christian Slater and Samantha Mathis. And the following Monday, July 23rd, is our Sound Off, our freeform segment in which we're going to play the movie game. I'm going to do an obscure movie discovery, and Davie has tasked me with doing the top 5 angry youth films based on our discussion of Pump Up the Volume, and that's Monday, July 23rd. So those are July episodes coming up here for you. So I'm ready to jump into Ant-Man and the Wasp with a summary.
I'm excited.
Devin, you ready for the summary?
Very ready.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. Scott's dealings with the Avengers have made him persona non grata to Dr. Pym and his daughter Hope, who has now become the Wasp. However, Scott's experience in the quantum realm makes him valuable again as Hank seeks to retrieve Hope's long-lost mother from that same alternate universe. Their efforts become complicated by Ghost, a mysterious young woman with strange abilities. Ghost will stop at nothing to acquire Dr. Pym's technology, and that threatens the limited window our heroes have to retrieve Hope's mother and Dr. Pym's wife from the quantum realm. It's time for opening thoughts, so it's Ty's first time, so I'll let Devin go first, although Devin historically has been the worst at opening thoughts, in the sense that he will turn it into an opening dissertation. So our Devin will challenge himself now to use a phrase to describe how he feels about the movie. Hopefully less than 7 words. Devin, your opening thoughts.
I'm really good at closing thoughts, to be fair.
That's what all your girlfriends have told me.
Yes, lots of closing thoughts. None of that counts towards the 7 words.
Opening thoughts, Devin, go ahead.
Was very similar to the first Ant-Man in the sense that I consider it a middle-of-the-road Marvel movie that is enjoyable but kind of suffers from an odd tone where the comedy sometimes is clunky and interferes with the rest of what's going on.
That would qualify as an example of a bad opening thought because he could have because that was like a super long run-on sentence. So we'll see if Talia can beat him in her first attempt. Welcome to the society. What's your first opening thought?
I thought it was a perfect summer movie.
Okay.
That's short.
And that's how you do opening thoughts. Maybe Devin will take some notes. Yeah, that's how it's done. I like the first one, but I think this one had significant story issues, and that's my opening thought. I generally like to start the discussion with the positive things, and I do think that director Peyton Reed brings a lot to the table. I've liked him historically. His filmography includes films like Bring It On, which was a surprisingly fun, strong film, and also Down with Love, which I may have seen with you, Talia, back in 2003.
We did that together. Yeah.
I really enjoyed that film. That film made my top 10 that year, the sort of Rock Hudson, Doris Day homage kind of film. So Peyton Reed brings a lot of clever sensibility, like the pace, I think, of his films are really strong, and that helps Ant-Man and the Wasp a lot. And the comic staging, I think, is very good. Like many of the jokes, I feel like are obvious in the script, but Reed brings them to a new level. I mean, obviously with the use of scale, with all, with what the Ant-Man and the Wasp can do, but also I think a good example of what Peyton Reed brings to the table is the visualization of Michael Peña's stories. Very much a director's interpretation of the material, the way he stages and executes those highlights of both films, I think. Peyton Reed does a really good job with the pace, the comic staging. Do you guys have anything on the direction?
As I covered in point 7a of my opening thought, there's something a little clunky and inconsistent about the tone of both of these movies.
And I put that in the screenplay section, but what do you think the director is doing to interfere with that?
There's something about the way the comedy is played that makes it not quite fit into the Marvel universe the way, say, the comedy does so well with Guardians of the Galaxy. And there's something almost slow about the comic timing whenever they kind of just purposely take a moment, and Michael Douglas is taking these long comedic pauses and all this weird stuff. Like, it just feels like everything grinds to a weird halt.
I disagree with that. There's rhythm and release in the comedy. It's shifting pace to serve the comedy. So I think from a comic sensibility point of view, I think that works. It's a detriment potentially to the Marvel universe. Like, I do agree that it feels weird within the MCU.
That's my main point. I feel like there's something about that style of comedy that I enjoy, and there's something about the Marvel universe that I enjoy. There's something about combining the two that feels off to me. It made me disengage a lot.
I kind of agree. It felt like a screenplay thing to me, but it's interesting that you put it in the Peyton Reed camp. Talia, do you have any rebuttal?
I don't know if it's rebuttal. I mean, I think the comedy is predictable. It felt very similar to the first one. I sort of feel like it's Paul Rudd being Paul Rudd. I mean, I don't love the Marvel universe, so I might come at this from a different place. It feels very heavy-handed always to me, and too much and too dramatic, and it's just always the end of the world. So I really appreciate the lightness of Ant-Man. They're like saving one person instead of saving the world. And so I like that it's a bit quippier and, sillier at times, and they're giant ants. And I liked this one more than I liked the first one, actually.
I'm going to disagree with that. I like the first one much, much more, but I'll get to that in the screenplay section.
I think there's sort of a freedom in the comedy in this one. But again, like, I think I didn't think that Ant-Man and the Wasp was a perfect movie. I think it was light. Every Marvel movie feels very similar to me. I'm struggling with those after however many we've seen now. This feels fun. Like, that's what I want to do in the summer.
Fair to say this is sort of the antidote to the rest of the Marvel universe for you?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I didn't even really like Guardians that much. These aren't my favorite movies, but if I'm watching Marvel movies, I'm probably laughing harder at Ant-Man.
The original Ant-Man from 2015 was supposed to be the thing that burst the bubble. Because Ant-Man was, it's a weirder character. It's a little more fringy to some degree in the MCU. The buzz leading into the original Ant-Man, it was gonna be finally the superhero bubble was gonna burst. And then the movie turned out to be pretty good. Like, I remember going in and being like, that was really fun. And then it also did very well at the box office, showing those naysayers that Marvel will not die. But this feels like more of a misstep.
The other aspects of the direction were solid in terms of how the action sequences played out.
The whole deal playing with the scope and the size. The other thing I think he does well in both films is going back and forth between the perspective of the small and the perspective of the large, and how things look to each other and how different that is visually. I mean, like the train sequence in the first one, I think is a good example. And here, the kitchen sequence that's early in the movie is another good example. We see what it looks like from their perspective when they're chasing a wasp around, and from her perspective as she's, running from a huge knife or mallet or whatever it is. Those are the sequences that make the Ant-Man films. That's what makes them fun. That's what makes them interesting, visually appealing. And Peyton Reed, they mastered that in the first one, and there's no complaints here. Second one, as far as those sequences are concerned, are just as good.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like it when Devin agrees. It doesn't happen too often, as you may have seen when you watched our top 10 of 2017, everybody.
Hey, we had some synergy in that list.
We did have, I think, 2 or 3 films that we shared on our list. Performances, we're running out of time already because I do want to talk more about the screenplay. I think the screenplay is the thing that I really want to talk about, but I don't want to ignore the performances because I did find they were mostly disappointing. And I wanted to, so I'll quickly just say, to Talia's point earlier, Paul Rudd is basically Paul Rudd, and I'm not feeling much dimension from him at all. It works for the character. The character was established as Paul Rudd-like, and so it works as far as that's concerned. Evangeline Lilly, I thought, was a lot better in the first one. Like, even though she's supposed to have more of a presence in this film, I felt like she was much more blah, much less invested.
I was excited that she got screen time. I read that she's the first female character to have her name in the title of a movie, and this is the 20th Marvel movie, and that's a lot of the struggles that I have with Marvel movies is I think the female characters are just shit.
Captain Marvel's coming. Brie Larson is Captain
Marvel. She's coming, and I love the women of Black Panther. But my biggest issue with her is just that she's someone's daughter and she's someone's girlfriend. I read an interview with her where she was talking about an all-female Avengers movie and that she thought that she would help lead that team. But I don't think she can exist without her father or her boyfriend. I don't think she's a strong enough character actually to hold her own film.
I think she could, because I know how Wasp sort of evolves as a character in the comics and the cartoons.
I've read about that, right? But I'm not sure if they gave her enough. I thought her performance was maybe better in the first film as well. She got to do more in this. She had more screen time. But in some ways she was boring. She's very much the straight man to Paul Rudd, and I guess in some ways I had higher expectations, though I feel like I should be happy with what I got because here's a woman who gets her name in the title and she gets equal screen time, but I'm still not satisfied with her.
There's no good reason for her not to be more three-dimensional like the women in Black Panther, as the example that you gave. I mean, I think Black Widow's a really good character in the
I'm back and forth on Black Widow. I'm not sure if the Wasp, though she's super cool, is an individual enough outside of who she is to the men in the film.
The only real highlight was Michael Pena, but on the flip side of that is character played by Hannah John Kamen, who plays the Ghost, the villain. She was actually, I think, pretty bad. But I actually think Hannah John Kamen as Ghost was a detriment to the movie. I think it was a weak performance. I didn't believe her for a moment. Her anger, her rage, didn't buy her seeming descent into desperate madness, didn't buy any part of that journey. And then when she comes back, I didn't buy that either.
I couldn't figure out if that was a performance issue or a script issue. She kept talking about her pain, and it was driving me a little bit crazy because her pain is never really described. Is it physical pain? Is it emotional pain? She's so desperate to get out of it. She's willing to hurt other people to do that. But it's just called the pain. And it's very hard for me to understand what that is and to then sympathize with her. And so I didn't even know if she knew what her pain was. And so part of me thinks it's not her fault. She was just acting pain.
Yeah. And that's actually also what I call Devin, the pain. Devin.
I found many of the performances disappointing as well. I thought the chemistry between Evangeline Lilly and Paul Rudd was pretty weak.
It was good in the first one, I felt. And I also rewatched the first one, and I really felt sparks between them, and then not so much in this movie.
There weren't as many requirements of them. They barely got their sparks going at the end of the first one.
I actually disagree with that in the sense that I feel like in the first one, even before they were, it seemed like they were going to be connecting. There was moments, there was glances and things like that. There was furtiveness, if you will. Here, they get together after not seeing each other for years or whatever, how long it's been, and it's gone, but where their screenplay is acting like it's still there.
And that's what I meant by there was less required of them in the first one, because in the first one it really was just, oh, I'm attracted to that person, I'm flirty or whatever. As opposed to in this one, the actors really had to, all on their own, the actors really had to build and create a history with each other. They really had to create a sense that these characters really did get together in those intervening years and then also got untogether. All that history that you're supposed to feel just in their eyes, just in the way they look at each other. And I didn't really feel any of that. I could tell that it was implied by the screenplay, that it wasn't just one kiss, that they went all the way there.
They went all the way, Devin? Did they go all the way?
That they went all the way there in terms of their relationship. They were together. It was also suggested that they then, of course, broke it off. That requires a whole lot more in terms of the chemistry between the actors.
They broke up because he didn't invite her. Like, she was mad that she hadn't been invited to go and join the Avengers. Like, that was the grudge that she was holding. So, like, is that what broke them up? And also, I don't see her as being a petty character, and that's sort of a petty thing to like, hold on to and break up about. And then there's like, I don't know, I felt like there was nothing between them, and then suddenly they're kissing. And like, if they're going to be romantically involved, that has to follow through the whole script. And it was like, the first one, I agree, there was some chemistry. You could see them into each other. And then this one, there was just sort of nothing. There was weird anger, and suddenly they were kissing. And then they were like in the car with the kid as if they were a family. There were so many things missing.
Well, that's a great segue, if you guys are good with the performances, to the screenplay, because I think all this pours right into...
Well, just one more thing about Paul Rudd. It's pretty much echoing what you said a few minutes ago, but just, he's Paul Rudd. You know,
I was hoping you were going to say it better than I did, but no.
Well, Robert Downey Jr. built a new vibe of his style, of what he
persona.
brings as an iconic actor in the Marvel Universe. I feel like Paul Rudd brought his usual Paul Rudd, and that's part of why this feels a little off to me.
And they've crafted Ant-Man more to Paul Rudd instead of Paul Rudd crafting himself more to what they wanted, the initial incarnation of Ant-Man was going to be. Of course, in the comics, Ant-Man is Michael Douglas, but that's a whole other thing. All right, so screenplay, guys. So yeah, I mean, the good news is there's lots of good comedy. Like, I laughed quite a bit, but perhaps maybe too much of a focus on comedy. Things like the malfunctions of the new suit seem to be a forced element in order to have more comic situations. If the new suit is that bad, why not just use the old suit? And once Ant-Man joined the Avengers, it feels weird to force him back into this world that's lighter and there's less at stake. Once he went to Germany, it's a whole different world. Having this little small adventure while the rest of the Avengers are off doing, those of you that have seen Infinity War knows what the other Avengers are doing, it feels weird to have him like battling Ghost and an arms dealer guy. That's part of my issue with the screenplay. I have more, but let's start there. Devin.
I mean, I agree that that's one of the reasons why this felt off, is because it felt so much smaller. Pardon the, obvious pun there, but like it's in some ways it was meant to be smaller, of course, but in some way that also made it feel off to me.
It seemed ill-conceived in that regard because, and I mean, for most of the movie, there seems to be very little tie to the other movies. Thankfully, the post-credit scene ties it back in a satisfying way. I still feel like for most of the movie, it felt weird. It was uncomfortable. The other movies all seem more in sync with one another.
Yeah.
Ty, I know you're not as huge a fan of the universe, so how do you respond to that? That was a relief for you, maybe?
I know I'm in the minority. I didn't like Infinity War. You know what it's building up to. It's so big. It's so heavy. For me, that movie was sort of like a waste of big emotions. And so I was really happy to come to something that was just sort of straightforward. And like trying to reunite a family is also like not a small story either. I think it's a timely one right now too. But, I don't know, like I'm okay with it not fitting in. But again, I think some of that's personal because I'm just really tired of everything being so huge.
But how do you feel about them like forcing jokes like the malfunctioning suit and things like that? How do you
Yeah,
respond
and
to
I felt like there was too much about the suit. I totally agree. There were a lot of holes in this for me, and one of them was the suit. I couldn't figure out why he wasn't just putting on the other suit. But a lot of the holes for me sort of came in the science part, not so much in the comedy, like the quantum realm.
I was wondering how she ate for 30 years in the quantum realm.
So also, I think it's really cool that we get to see young Michelle Pfeiffer and young Michael Douglas. Like, I can't believe they make them look so good and so young. But why is she aging in there, right? Like, if her body's aging, that means there's like her natural biology, right, is happening, but then doesn't she have to eat? Where is the food?
That's the sort of thing that I'm more willing to play along with in this new universe that's created. Some things bump for me. I was definitely thinking about eating. From a writing point of view, felt like the suit thing was contrived, and that's why that really stuck out a lot more. If they took the time, they could find a way to explain food. They just didn't bother. Now, the actual plot is a problem for me in this movie, too, because I feel like, now, I like the idea, to Talia's point, I like the idea to retrieve Janet Van Dyne. That's a great idea to start out with the movie. But Ghost and Birch both lost me as villains. I mean, first of all, as talented as Ghost's skills were, that storyline always seemed like it could have been solved with a conversation. Like, their needs were too in line. They both needed to get Janet Van Dyne out of the quantum realm. Why not just, like, combine forces? Why are we beating each other up? It doesn't make much sense. And Birch was way too silly to ever really feel like a genuine threat, which I also found to be a waste of Walter Goggin as an actor.
There was the third villain, too, who was the FBI agent.
He was so doofy. Like, I like Randall Park as an actor, but he was so doofy, I didn't consider him at all. Like,
I enjoyed his doofiness. But yeah, there were like 3 different groups, right, chasing them all the time. It was a little bit too much, maybe.
But I mean, like, for no real good reason. The whole idea that everybody's mad at him for fighting with the Avengers, like, and like, it broke some laws or something, like, all that bumped for me. Like, the foundation that they were basing the movie on felt so thin. Like, the rift between Hank and Scott and Hope, it seems to be totally disingenuous. The level of it was so deep for something that didn't seem like that big a deal. And furthermore, like you said, Hope kind of wanted to go. To be that mad about it, to not speak to for somebody for 2 years, that seems a little ridiculous, especially for people that are supposedly a team and partners and all this other stuff. And like, Hank used to be a member of, S.H.I.E.L.D., and so he would get it. Like, I don't understand. It felt forced. It felt like they needed to create the conflict in order to have a sequel.
I felt from the get-go that was forced conflict. It's almost like they knew it was forced conflict, so they had to add the other 2 foils that you guys just brought up.
I don't know if that's the proper usage of the phrase foils, at least from a literary point of view.
Antagonist in some way. I feel like the plot, most importantly, was almost too understandable. I felt like, oh yeah, they're making sure the 11-year-olds get it.
Sure, I was thinking I could have brought my 4-year-old, and she probably would have laughed. She wouldn't have been scared. It definitely felt like a movie you can bring your kids to.
I just felt in both of these movies, the original and the sequel, that there was much more clunky exposition in the first 10 minutes than in most of these films.
I had that noted as well, and I skipped it. And it was really bad, really egregious in this one. I was offended. I guess maybe they feel like people didn't rewatch it. Like, all 3 of us rewatched it the day before. He told the same story over again. Like, he already told that story. And he doesn't need to retell his daughter. She knows it. He's retelling it for our sake, which is offensive.
Like, it all had to take place during this 3-day window, right? Like, he had 2 days, whatever, until his bracelet came off, and that happened to be the same 3 days that they were going to be able to, right, track Michelle Pfeiffer. And this is a whole movie about reuniting a family, and yet he's willing to risk being caught outside of his right ankle bracelet and then losing his daughter. But it's all okay because his daughter gives him permission? It's like, you don't really let your kids tell you what to do. I don't know. Like, the timeline of it, like, it all had to happen during the 72 hours.
It raises the stakes, another screenplay contrivance. The idea of Janet having when Janet comes in and inhabits his body, or for a second, she's like, you have 2 hours to get me out. Like, after 30 years, there's just 2 hours left? What?
Yeah.
That happens to fall within the 3 days that he is left for his house arrest sentence and all this other stuff.
It was all just so perfectly convenient to, like, make it all so important.
I'm getting super frustrated just thinking about it. That leads to my next thing, which is this issue with the screenplay, and that it's an incredible lack of depth. And I realized this when trying to work on the T-word segment, which Devin might not know what that is, but Tal, you watched the Afternoon Delight episode, because this is something we started recently. When we talk about themes, we call it the T-word because Davie's afraid of them. Maybe without Davie here, we can just call them themes. A lot of Marvel movies, what I like about them, and Devin, I know this is true of you as well, is even though they're comic book movies, a lot of them have something going on under the surface. Sometimes something, geopolitical, certainly Civil War and Ultron. The original Iron Man had other stuff going on, reflections of our society that add to the overall impact of the movie. I don't feel that here. If anything, maybe there's something about redemption. Especially when it comes to rehabilitation of criminals. But even as criminals, they are lovable Robin Hood types, so the redemption lacks impact. And as I said, Scott takes so little of it seriously that while it's funny, it undercuts any effort to say something about criminal rehabilitation. But that said, it's not just Scott that needs redemption, it's Dr. Pym as well. So there's that. So in terms of themes, what do you guys think? Do you like my idea of redemption, or you got something else?
I don't know if I saw redemption. I mean, I think I could probably think about it a lot and find places. I mean, it seemed like they were really pushing the father-daughter thing, right? There's 3 different father-daughter stories going on.
I think that plays in redemption in the sense that all these guys had wronged their daughters in some way. And in Scott's case and in Dr. Pym's case, to some degree, a criminal way that strained their relationship with their daughters. These issues of retrieving the wife, saving the world, all the other stuff is about reconnecting with their daughters to some degree. So those things kind of go hand in hand to me.
I mean, I would say that the redemption between Pym and Hope is he finally lets her put on the wasp suit. One of the issues for me in the first movie is simply that she's way more qualified than Scott is. And for some reason, he needs to be the one to do it just because Pym is scared. And she's ready to do it the whole time.
I bought that protective quality. I understood, especially having lost his wife. I bought that, quite frankly.
Okay. But she finally gets the suit and she's great, and I think she's better than Ant-Man. She's
as a
more
hero for sure. Yeah.
As a fighter, and so that would maybe be the redemption, is that she finally gets to be who she was meant to be.
Okay. And Devin, what about you? Themes? Are you with me on redemption? You got something else?
I mean, I'm mostly with you on the redemption theme. I think that the way
gotta qualify it a little bit.
To me, it's not so much redemption as much as it is so much of this plot, so much of this character is about stepping up, being willing to be the bigger
hero,
play the bigger role, and not just be the little guy who's running a thieving gang or running even a security company, but to step up and say, you know what, I might screw up again, but you know what, my daughter believes in me. There's that whole sequence of her saying, go do it, Dad, I believe in you, and him going and doing it, and then him being in the car with them after he's successfully gotten them out of there, and the way Evangeline Lilly looks at him. Those 3 scenes together, I was like, that's the movie.
I can see that. My problem with it is there never should have been a rift to begin with. The rift that caused all that was so thin that I felt relieved. I'm like, all right, finally, we're back on track is how I felt, rather than any sort of emotional impact. I felt it was good. I'm like, okay, I feel like now the movie can begin.
It's not so much about the rift that I agree with you is totally thin and contrived between him and Pym and Hope, but it was about how that 3-scene sequence and him doing that was a real gear turn in terms of him as just a human being, as a character saying, I can be strong enough, I can step up.
I think just him stepping up, though, was hard for me because Hope lost her mother. Her whole life was changed because she didn't have a mother. She lost her mother at a young age. She's never recovered from it. And yet she's asking Paul Rudd to come and help her and possibly leave his daughter without a parent.
I can see that point of view, certainly. It's almost 9:30 Eastern, and Devin, you're still lit, so it's really exciting. You're still lit in the middle of a show.
This is a wonderful experience all around.
So, guys, I'm about to wrap things up. Do you guys have more that you wanted to cover that I didn't talk about? Are we good?
Good.
And it was Talia's first time, the first female ever.
Happy to be here.
Do you have a good time?
I did have a good time. I did, though I think I maybe changed my mind a little bit. I said it was a perfect summer movie, and after our whole discussion, now I'm thinking it wasn't a perfect summer movie at all, and now I'm feeling annoyed about things. So
I also, over the course of the discussion, have become increasingly like, oh, I liked it even less than I thought. I can tell you that our next current feature, which will kick off, believe it or not, our 50th set of episodes, is going to be on Thursday, August 2nd. in which we're going to do another sequel, Mission Impossible Fallout. I don't remember if it's 5 or 6 or where in the Tom Cruise timeline that is. I haven't seen Rogue Nation yet, but I will right before I see Fallout, and that's coming up on Thursday, August 2nd. And Davie will supposedly be back for that. And Davie will also be back hopefully this Monday on July 16th, in which we do our Indie Spotlight, the French film from 2013, Blue is the Warmest Color. Make sure to tune in for that. In the meantime, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.